It's 9 p.m. Do you know where your key fob is?
Hey there, Nate Benson here. Tonight on the agenda, it's time to play Name That Commissioner. Also, the mayor and former mayor spar over the Granville investigation. Former Mayor Scanlon is pretty much over the idea that he somehow meddled in that matter. Plus, Ron Plant sits down with County Executive Mark Poloncarz, and I went to Arkansas. On the agenda starts right now. Welcome to the show. The Ryan administration has nominated all of its commissioners, but they have to get through a symbolic approval by the Buffalo Common Council. And during the committee meetings on Tuesday, lawmakers put the candidates through the ringer, namely would-be Parking Commissioner Justin Booth, Permits and Inspections Commissioner Lou Petrucci, and Finance Commissioner Jessica Brown. Here's a bit of the back and forth between the council members and the candidates during that meeting.
How do you ensure that parking enforcement and pricing do not disproportionately impact low-income residents or neighborhoods already facing a lot of economic pressure?
So I think we need to do a better job of informing the public on why we have, first, the parking enforcement officers out there. So, we want to make sure that Public Works can accomplish their job during the wintertime. We can get plows down our city streets. That is certainly a big component of the work that we're doing. And so making sure that we can continue to, educate, inform, build efficiencies in our processes, and use data to better collect where we are doing enforcement and how we're doing enforcement and what rules we're actually regulating is going to be important to increase transparency in that process, both with the council and for the work that we are doing collectively as a city.
Thank you. I appreciate the transparency, but this is also about equity and making sure that when we are giving fines or giving tickets in communities that are disproportionately impacted or economically disproportionate, how do we just make sure that there is true equity in that? So we talk about transparency, which I appreciate, but that's not answering the question.
Sure, and I think that's a hard one. I think this would come back to this body. I know that there's certainly examples from other cities around the country and the world where they're actually, your parking ticket is going to be based on how much money you make each year so that it's equitably distributed. So $40 for maybe you and I may not be a lot of money, but $40 from some folks in our community certainly is. And so can we look at our existing policies and regulations and make sure we can transform it so we can make sure equity is always a part of that conversation?
We presenting the budget very soon, but just our dire fiscal situation, how do you plan to tackle that? I know it's a very broad question. Is it leaning into cuts like my colleague mentioned? Is it obviously we need to generate more revenue, but just a high level overview of how you will tackle the dire fiscal situation?
I would say, I'm trying to generalize as much as I can because I don't want to be here all day, but I would say budget simply revenues, expenses. So it's one or the other. Expenses, looking at that, where can we cut, but we don't want to cut too much. So then you're looking at revenues, and I think there's some untapped revenues that aren't being collected enough, maybe revenues that weren't even billed. Even if it's $1, I'll bill it just to have the precedent of we bill for the money that we're due. So that's important. But in the end, there will be a gap, and in the end, there will have to be some sort of increase to taxes, I would say. And even beyond that, there might be a budget line for some kind of deficit borrowing, depending on where we end up. And that's just the truth of the matter. And it's going to take a few years to climb out of the situation we're in.
And I think that this administration has talked about efficiency, and so I hope to see efficiency. So what things will you do to make that process more impactful throughout the city? And I think my colleague, the president of the Common Council, has mentioned he would love to see that process more in those areas that are in need, desperate need of improved housing. So what will you be doing, and how will you go about improving those numbers, and how will you make it transparent? Well, this council will know what's going on, because again, many times we find out stuff in the news. I hope this is a new day and we don't have to find it out in the news. We should have those conversations. So please, if you could.
Thank you, Council Member, for the question. There's, again, upon my initial review, returning to see what the status is, there are things that we can do differently. Our resources are always scarce, particularly at this time that we're facing a budget deficit. So how can we prioritize these scarce resources to get the greatest impact possible? So one of the things that we've been discussing, again, I'm not in the position yet, would be a scoring mechanism, some type of device that would allow us to, based upon a variety of characteristics, prioritize the worst of the worst with respect to those units. Second thing is that I still get questions about it, and I think we need to do better outreach so that people know and understand what this program is, what it's supposed to be, because even though it's been in effect, I still field questions even before I had the opportunity to sit before you all, because I still don't think that people quite understand what it's all about. Second thing is that while there's been a fair amount of initial, I believe that they met their 6,000 units that they were looking at, it's the issuance and the follow-up as to whether or not people are going to either complete the work or go to court seems to be the pinch point right now. And what do we do to put those things put things in place to move things forward so that we can have more quality housing units? With respect to reporting out, I'm all about reporting out and transparency. I'm happy to find what type of vehicle or mechanism is best, not only for this body, but for the general public, so they can see and engage us and see what's going on.
Also during that meeting, Interim Police Commissioner Craig Macy was on the hot seat. He was asked specifically what has changed regarding conflicts of interest since the Ryan administration took over. There was a conflict when then Lieutenant Lucia Esquilin responded to the crash of Erie County Sheriff's Narcotics Chief DJ Granville back in April 2024. Esquilin is the sister-in-law of Granville. Here's what Macy had to say.
I don't expect you to hash out your plans completely, but I know that you've implemented some changes based on our conversations. Can you talk about some of the changes that you've already implemented?
Sure. Thank you for that question, sir. Within the first week of me being here, we did implement two policies for the police department. One of conflict of interest, if there is officers who are responding to a call and there is even a perceived possibility of conflict of interest, that they are to call the overall watch commander, as well as if there is an officer-involved accident from a different agency, to call that agency to have their equivalent of our watch commander, which is a captain, be notified, and they have the opportunity to respond to the scene.
And the Granville story doesn't end there. Mayor Ryan promised to release everything related to the internal affairs investigation surrounding the Buffalo Police Department's response to that crash. And he once again alluded to former acting Mayor Chris Scanlon interfering with that investigation. This is the second time Ryan has made that statement. The first time, Scanlon said nothing. This time, he's not letting it slide. As for the release of the Internal Affairs report,
the law department has all the files. There's thousands and thousands of pages of it. So we're going through it now, but we plan on getting that out to the public as soon as the review is done.
And sources tell Two on Your Side that it could be released by the end of February. One of the reasons why it's taking so long.
We can't release identifiable information to people who weren't involved. So you have to go through every page to see if they, note a complainant's, somebody whose car was hit, their name and their address. That's got to be crossed out as a matter of state law.
And the mayor once again alludes to the nature of which the investigation was conducted.
It would have been my druthers to have the Granville situation settled after January 1st, so I could have been part of that. And I wish it had not been, settled hours before I took office. It definitely leads the public with the impression that this was pushed forward, under cover of darkness.
That's the second time Mayor Ryan has made a statement like that, the first time being on Inauguration Day. At the time, former acting Mayor Chris Scanlon did not respond to the notion that he may have interfered with the investigation or closed it early for political reasons. This time, he is responding.
This incident took place before me and took place when Byron Brown was mayor and Joe Gramalia was commissioner. However, I had to answer for this incident every single week. And one thing I stated repeatedly was that investigation would be done in a professional manner by Internal Affairs as quickly as possible.
Internal Affairs could not complete their investigation until the Niagara County District Attorney wrapped up his. Once that happened, the IA investigation moved forward, and by mid-December, disciplinary action was presented to then-acting Mayor Scanlon.
I told them they could proceed.
According to Scanlon, that led to a collectively bargained process that included a hearing for the 5 officers involved, a chance for them to appeal, and ultimately the discipline was decided on December 30th.
I would have preferred it to be done sooner. I said all along to you and others that I spoke to the media, the sooner we can put this to bed, the better.
And Scanlon says that as mayor, he might have been able to lobby for a different disciplinary action against the officers, one of which, Lucia Esquilin, was demoted from lieutenant to detective sergeant.
I think I probably could have. I think you could, but like I said, I do not insert myself and would not insert myself.
And says he simply accepted the actions brought forth by then-Commissioner Alfonso Wright on December 30th.
Commissioner Al Wright, his deputy commissioners, handled that investigation once it was finalized in Internal Affairs, handed over to them, and decided upon a discipline, which I was more than okay with.
Coming up on the agenda, Ron Plants chats with the county executive about ICE and the future. But first, a look at the weekend weather. Welcome back. Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz has been very vocal about ICE enforcement in Erie County. 2 on Your Side's Ron Plants sat down with Poloncarz this week to talk about the issue, but also chatted about the future. Poloncarz previously said he would not seek another term as county executive. So what's next for him? Here's part of that interview.
Well, they're not the same as a police officer or an Erie County Sheriff's deputy. They're not even getting the same training that we would give a rookie recruit as a Sheriff's deputy or a police officer through our police academy at SUNY Erie. The ICE is the follow-up to what used to be the INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service. It's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're not out there policing streets. They're not supposed to be policing streets because they don't have the power as a police officer to police the streets. But that's what they're doing in Minneapolis, with thousands of ICE agents on the street. So when people think of ICE, it's not your traditional law enforcement, which we think of like the Buffalo Police Department, Lackawanna Police Department, or the Erie County Sheriff's Office. This is a different type of enforcement agency. It's not there to police the streets, but that's kind of what they're doing, and the actions that they're taking are, in my eyes, many of them unconstitutional because they violate the Fourth Amendment right of unreasonable searches and seizures. So I want people to understand we're talking about immigration and customs enforcement under the Federal Department of Homeland Security. We think of the people at the airport, the transportation agents. They work under the Department of Homeland Security, but we don't think of them as law enforcement. We think of those that are there to ensure that when we get on a plane, that there's not going to be a bomb on that plane or someone's going to have a gun on that plane. And that's in some ways what ICE is, but for immigration and customs enforcement. Unfortunately, a lot of people think, well, they're police, they're law enforcement. They're not. They have a responsibility, but what they're doing is going beyond that. Well, I'll give you an example. We have what are called peace officers in Erie County. Peace officers are not police officers. They swear an oath. They can have a badge. They can actually have a gun, but they're not a police officer. They're not what we consider traditional law enforcement. And so the difference between a peace officer and a police officer is a police officer could actually arrest you. A peace officer can't do those type of things. And that's really what ICE is. They have a responsibility, they have a power, but they're not what we would normally consider law enforcement like police and sheriff's deputies. I guess you could say that, but in my eyes, they're not what comparable to our Buffalo PD and our sheriffs, and they have nowhere near the training. Our officers in the local police departments, as well as the sheriff's deputies, have a significant more amount of training before they even get on the street, and then they're required to continue to do training. What I'm hearing is these agents of ICE have nowhere near that level. And it's quite apparent after you saw what happened with the Alex Preddy murder. I've talked to a few police officers and they're like, I would never have held my gun like that. I would have found a way to de-escalate. And I just think that because they're not getting proper training, because they're not police officers, they're ICE agents, that we saw that incident, or we saw the incident with Renee Good. We should not know the names of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, you and I, unless we were family members. But we do because they were murdered on the streets by our government in Minneapolis, and it's wrong. Well, no, not this issue here. I certainly have been involved with the National Association of Counties for a number of years. I've actually pulled back some of my work associated with that. I am a member of the National Democratic County Officials Executive Committee. I'm the first vice chair and will be chair of it next year. I do have a responsibility associated with that position to talk about issues that matter to me, matter to people in the community, and I will not stop talking about that either. I've had a lot of people, it seems like, on social media criticize me for saying, well, you're the county executive, why are you talking about national issues? But those national issues affect us locally. And the things that happen nationally have an impact in Erie County and Western New York. Just look at what happened with regards to President Trump declaring tariffs on Canada and then saying he wanted to take over Canada as the 51st state. Not only has that hurt the relationship that we've had with our Canadian friends for centuries, it's actually hurt our economy. There's no doubt about that. So I'm not afraid to talk about those issues, and it doesn't matter if I'm the county executive or I'm out of office, which won't happen until 2028. I'll still be talking about those issues. I don't have anything that would take me out of this office, let's put it that way. My term runs until December 31st of 2027. There will be an election for county executive in 2027, but I will not be on the ballot. Someone else will be running for this office from the Democratic Party. Actually, there'll probably be multiple candidates running from the Democratic Party, and the same thing with the Republican Party. Just because I'm not running for county executive means I'm not going to stop talking about issues that matter to me. And would I potentially pursue a different seat in the future? Yes, if it was the right seat and I felt I could make a difference. Well, I've been doing this for a long time, Ron. You know that. I think if you go back through my social media, probably back to my first term as county executive, we'll find things that I commented on with regards to national politics. I do have a role to play in the National Democratic County Officials. I will be the chair of it, which means I represent all county officials across the United States, and there's more than 3,000 counties across the United States. So I do have a role in it. I do have a voice currently right now in the National Democratic Party. And I will continue to talk about these issues, whether it's issues regarding ICE or the economy. As we've seen, Donald Trump is focused on building his golden ballroom. And myself and my fellow Democratic County colleagues are focused on whether you got enough money to put food on your dining room table. So I'm going to continue to talk about that.
Next on the agenda, I went to Arkansas. Nope, that's not a joke. I was in Arkansas earlier this week. I'll explain why when we come back. Wrapping up the agenda this week, I was out of the mix and did not have a show last Friday. I am deeply sorry for that, but I have a good reason. I was sent to Arkansas to help our sister station, KFSM, with some of their winter weather coverage. They needed an expert in snow and ice, and I'm like Bruce Wayne responding to the bat signal. I flew down. Why do you care about weather coverage in Arkansas? You probably don't, but I got to fill the show either way. Here's a little bit of the work photographer Jackson Hickey and I did while we were down there.
Our friends from Buffalo, New York are also here helping us cover this winter weather. Reporter Nate Benson and photographer Jackson Hickey are lending us a hand and have been in Van Buren for the last 24 hours. They're joining us live now, and Nate, you've had a full day in Van Buren. How has it been?
Hey there, guys. Yeah, we're in Van Buren right now. It's
slippery. It's cold. It's nice. It kind of feels like a Buffalo day, if I'm honest. It's a low hovering 20-degree temperature, so certainly I feel like I'm home. I'm happy to be here helping you guys out. But we've been here in Van Buren looking at the conditions, and I want to show you this video from Sky 5 that we shot a little earlier. This is Main Street in Van Buren earlier today. It was really quiet throughout Crawford County all day today. People certainly adhering to the advice to stay home and sit this storm out. Crews were out all day long working to keep the roads clear as best they can, but naturally one of the problems is that layer of slush turning into ice throughout the day. But county crews have been out all day. Now the Department of Emergency Management in Crawford County is reminding people not to get tricked by the lull in this storm and to take a moment to think before you go out, especially those who have to.
And obviously there's people that can't stay at home. They still have to go to work. Safety always first. I always side on the safety side of things. You know, make sure if you're outside, your skin's covered, you're well protected. Remember that most accidents happen right out your front door when you slip on ice. So, make sure everything's cleared.
One other aspect of the storm is the cold temperatures. Emergency management talked about checking on your elderly neighbors. And if you're concerned about pipes freezing, emergency management says to let the water drip from your faucet or bathtub, and under no circumstances use open flame or a heat gun to try and thaw your pipes. Back in Buffalo, we have a lot of older homes that freeze in the wintertime, and people every year use open flame to try to thaw those pipes. Absolutely do not try to do that. Coming up at 6, though, we're going to take a little bit of a look at the fun side of this storm, if there is one, and it's quite interesting. We're going to have all of that coming up at 6. Live in Crawford County, Van Buren specifically, I'm Nate Benson. Let's send it on back to you guys in the studio.
Officials in Van Buren are warning drivers conditions there will get worse before they get better. Our friends Nate Benson and his photojournalist from our sister station in Buffalo are helping us out with our winter storm coverage. Nate, what's the latest there in Van Buren?
Yeah, hey there, guys. I can confirm what officials are saying. Conditions are worse than certainly they were an hour ago when I was on 5 News. And the good advice is people are listening to the advice of emergency management and staying off the roads. Crawford County woke up to a thick layer of ice and snow on all major roadways, from the I-40 corridor to Main Street in Van Buren, which was welcoming news for some folks.
Yeah, I like the snow.
But for Crawford County Department of Emergency Management Director Veronica Robbins, it's been a long week.
We're on standby anytime we have a system like this come through. We are a resource for our county emergency services.
And the standing by will continue as phase 2 of this storm ramps up Saturday night and Sunday morning. With more sleet and snow expected for the River Valley, the biggest piece of advice County Emergency Management has:
if your power outage goes out, contact your electric company. Don't assume someone else has done it. They don't mind for all those phone calls to go through. Make sure you call.
And if you thought road conditions Saturday were bad, the county is expecting Sunday to be worse.
It's probably going to be treacherous to get out on it because it's going to refreeze in the night. Anything that melts off, it's just going to turn to ice.
But county plow crews and RDOT have kept up with plowing the primary roadways, but there's still some areas that haven't even been worth trying to clear because of the terrain. Logtown Hill in Van Buren remained closed throughout the storm and will for all traffic for several days.
So we're asking people not to travel on that road or go near it.
However, sledding the streets around Logtown Hill, that seems fine. Stanley Soltaire and his friends prepping for that new Olympic sport this year, municipal sled cross. I did not know there was an Olympic street sledding competition this year in the Olympics, but it looks like you might be medaling.
Yeah, actually I set it up every year and I'm always the winner. It works out great. I have no competition, so it's usually mostly just me, yeah.
You don't really get an opportunity too often, I would imagine, to be sledding down the street, do you?
No, that's why I'm number 1, baby. That's why every year when it happens, I'm number 1, yeah.
Now, certainly fun is fun, but as you can see, conditions are worsening here in Van Buren, so heed that advice. Stay off the roadways if you don't have to go out. And if you're concerned about, your pipes freezing, emergency management says make sure you just trickle some water from your faucet or tub, but absolutely do not use open flame to try and thaw those flames or those pipes. You know what? The conditions are so bad, I don't even know how to talk anymore. So let's get it back to the studio. I'm Nate Benson in Van Buren. Let's go back to you guys. Thanks again for watching. Remember, the news never stops on WGRZ.com. I'm Nate Benson. We'll see you at the next one.